What's up, guys? Jay Martin here. Now, I'm joined today by Alex Tsukernik, once again, the CEO of Nova Royalty. And this guy blows my mind. Every time I have him on the show, it seems like he has just completed a major transaction for Nova. And today is no exception. This morning, the company put out a press release, a very significant press release. And so I was excited to dive into the details with him today. In addition, I always enjoy picking Alex's brain on the macro environment, the copper sector. We're seeing a lot of price movement right now and some geopolitical shifts. So he shared his thoughts on those. Now, if you enjoyed this interview, as always, right beneath this video, there's a pinned comment where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter where I share my key takeaways and lessons from conversations just like this and plenty others. So, Alex Tsukernik, CEO of Nova Royalty. I hope you enjoy.
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people.
I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay, guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I'd like to welcome back the CEO of Nova Royalty, Alex Tsukernik. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. Thanks for having me back. It's always really fun to be here. Always.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun to have you on because you've usually got something really big to talk about. And today you have something really big to talk about, right?
Well, yeah, it's very fortunate timing for sure.
So, I want to jump into this recent transaction you've just completed, 1% royalty on the Westwall Copper Project. And, I want to get into these details, because I've had you on the show 5 or 6 times now, really since you guys listed publicly last fall, right? Or winter. And it was such a hot story. You were so busy. You came out the gate, completed 5 transactions in the first 5 months. And I think you set a precedent for your shareholder base, right?
I think we did, yes.
You've been quiet now for about 100 days, no deals, right? It's nothing, but it's been enough to have me receive a handful of comments on Twitter, YouTube, et cetera, saying, what's going on with Nova? What's going on? It's quiet. Like, well, actually, it's normal, right? So we're going to talk about this deal because it's big and the significance of it in the portfolio. Before we get to that, I want to talk about the commodity sector a little bit first, because the number one conversation I'm having on my channel right now, and that my peers are having on their channels, is the inflation debate, right? Are we going to see runaway inflation, or is this transitory, and how's that going to affect commodity prices? So what's your take, Alex?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm paying attention like everyone else. The nature of inflation is it takes a while to peg those expectations. None of us, I think very small number of people in the market today know what inflation looks like. Warren Buffett does, and people of that age, but you have to go back to the 70s to see like real inflation.
Right.
So I think when you look at the policies that the Fed has implemented, it's literally implemented by people who really haven't had inflation. Because you see a lot of money printed, I think there's a perception that the money velocity is not going to get out of control, and this is something that's manageable. But I mean, one thing you are seeing right now, I mean, I think everyone's admitted there's price increases that are pretty severe across the board.
Yeah,
you're seeing shortages that are quite severe across the board. And you're seeing that in every sector. It's not just mining. It's lumber. It's food. It's a lot of things. I mean, Starbucks can't source products. So I mean, this isn't a mining question. This is like your Starbucks question, which is a totally different deal. So I'm not sure exactly how you get away from all that. And so and the monetary policies, I think, have been pretty accommodating so far. And so I've spent a lot of time on this. I'm struggling to see how you go to a deflation case where every response has been easing, where price expectations are rising. So how is everything going to just deflate?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, so jury's out for me on this one, right? And I interview people on both sides. The deflationists like David Rosenberg, Dr. Lacey Hunt, Jeff Snyder, and the inflationists, which is pretty much everybody else. But you're right. You look past hard assets. You can look at soft commodities, right? Coffee, sugar, cocoa. All these things are quite inflated. But I guess where I come from is, we have to expect significant supply chain disruptions coming out of a world that's been locked up. And I think time will be the jury in this sense for me anyways. But when you look at something like copper, Alex, we're seeing copper hit 8-week lows at this point, right? And you know how reactionary retail investors can get. And so once again, I'm getting a lot of comments via Twitter, et cetera, saying, is the copper bull run over? So talk to me about that.
Well, the copper, I think, is a special case. Yeah, obviously it's a commodity that's very heavily used. Today it is the world's largest industrial metal market and all those things. But, copper, when you look at the green age and the electrification, is your main input. So nobody even knows how much copper we're going to need yet. You have to go electrify your whole grid. You have to go change all your cars. You have to do so much stuff with copper. I don't think anybody knows how much you're going to need, although there's always forecasts. I don't think anybody knows the price you're going to need in order to produce the stuff you're going to need.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows anything when it comes to copper. So people who are calling an end to a run before the run's begun. Listen, I don't have that kind of bravery, to be honest with you. Kind of what I see is nothing's even happened yet. You look at what's happened in the copper space. The majors are afraid to invest still, and that's pretty good prices historically, over $4. It's a very good price, but when you look at the risk profile that they have to absorb and kind of what's happening in the countries locally, it's not so easy. So I think you're in for supply shortages. Probably they're going to be much more acute than people expect.
Right. And what do you make of China's effort to suppress the copper price by dumping some base metals?
Well, look, I understand why. Obviously, they're seeing some domestic inflation from that. But again, it's, to what degree can one consumer control the raw materials market? Maybe in some very small, thinly traded markets, you can do that. But it's something like copper, I'm not sure how you're able to accomplish that.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to get your thoughts on that because you've got a unique perspective from where you sit as the CEO of Nova. And so I want to talk about Nova. I want to talk about this recent transaction. Why don't we start there at a high level? What have you just accomplished?
So look, just this morning, very fortunate timing with speaking with you, Jay. We acquired the royalty on the Westfall project, which is a very large copper project in Chile, owned by Anglo American and Glencore. So, kind of just stepping back, ours is a sector with a finite number of tier one assets. And those are the assets that drive everything. There's no such thing as a small copper mine as far as making a difference in the world. 2/3 of the world's copper is produced by copper mines making at least 100,000 tons a year. And when you actually boil it, when you increase that cutoff, you'll see that most of it is actually mines doing 200,000 tons a year. So you're really 150, 200,000 tons a year. So it's really a big mind game. So this is, when you look at the portfolios of the majors, there's actually not that much in there at the moment. So when we started Nova, what was the objective? Pick off what's there.
Right.
Yeah, because those will be the tip of the spear when a cycle really moves. They know those projects. They spend time and money on those projects. They've made plans for those projects. So if you look at what we've got now, we've got Taca Taca, which is First Quantum's next main priority. That's a very unique situation where a major like that is moving forward the greenfield actively. We have NuevaUnion, which is Teck and Newmont, which is, both of them have talked about it as a pipeline project post QB. We have Vizcachitas, which we picked up earlier, and that's shaping up to be a tier one project. And then we just got the West Wall, which is literally Vizcachitas' neighbor, which is incredible. So, really, when you look at the whole big Chilean belt where they're both located, those are the two main greenfield projects advancing. I'm not aware of anything else in the area. So now we've got the royalties on both of them. They really are both very large projects. They're both multi-billion ton properties that I think will grow significantly over time. And that's the exposure you want because, this is a belt with Andina and El Teniente and Los Bronces and Bulambres and El Pachon. So this is truly elephant country. And so I'm super excited that we have royalties on really the two greenfield projects here that legitimately have a chance. And, we'll see if there's a shared infrastructure situation there. But overall, listen, I'm super pleased because it's not we don't just want to pull the trigger to buy random things. I don't think that's the objective. You mentioned us being quiet. We came out of the gate, I agree, quite fast. But I think if you look at every transaction, it was very much on theme and very targeted. So now, we've got this one, we've got other things we want to do. So we're really excited.
Yeah. And anybody who's spent any time in the market, they're going to see that pace that you guys came out and understand that that's not sustainable, not because you maybe lack the energy. It's because of how specific you've been with those transactions. Everything that you guys have done has been chasing those top tier, as you said. And that takes time sometimes, although really it hasn't been that much time. Like, let's be honest about this. So
no, it hasn't.
Let's talk about the West Wall. So you acquired a 1% royalty. I believe it was 4.2 million cash. Is that correct?
It's 4.2 million cash. It's a net proceeds royalty, so there's some costs deducted from that. But yeah, look, we're very happy with everything. It's just, it's so tough to find really an asset where you say, you know what, you can see this becoming a major mine. And that's what you put your investors' capital into something that, can take a while. It's not as if these things happen, but I think the view we've taken, Jay, is that if you can consolidate ownership in really these key mineral camps, you really have the best possible exposure, because these are the types of assets that whenever something goes, they're going to go first. And so, if you want to be in the copper business and you look at what we have already, you just can't ignore what we have at this point. Just some of these are going to have to go. I think it's just by the nature of things. And so I think if you buy quality and you're targeted and you diversify, I think what the big thing that we've been on and just trying to explain to people is that, if you want to be able to diversify your portfolio in this business, you have to be a first mover. And so what gets me super excited is, we have the foundation. Now we're building toward the real critical mass. And there's other things on the horizon, which we like very much. And so you can really create a diversified, proper royalty company with really top-notch assets held by really top-notch counterparties, which is, I think, a very unique opportunity.
I love that. Now I want to give you the opportunity to speak about the proximity. You can look at Vizcachitas, you can look at West Wall and look at them as two separate transactions, but you told me off camera, 20 kilometers apart from each other. So they're next door neighbors. So what could that mean, Alex, for the future infrastructure, all of this stuff?
Listen, when you have two projects that are so close together, I think anybody who develops one will have to look at the other. Just by the nature of things. And my guess is that the way that things are going right now, it's probably going to be multiple majors cooperating more likely than not to kind of do things. So what's exciting is you see the potential for a real camp. And that's really tough to find, because you need the scale to get people in large companies interested to commit the capital at a time to really invest for decades into the future. So if you look at Nova, we've really been a collector of really the prize camps. So we've got Vizcachitas West Wall, we've got Taca Taca, we have NuevaUnion, which is La Fortuna and Milencho. We have Dumont, we have Twin Metals, which is the Loot complex. So we even exploration wise, we went into Janus Lake because that had a chance to be that. So you really try to, I think, get into these tier one camps where there's a clear demonstrable path to real viability in the hands of the most qualified companies. When you look at the royalty companies, so much of your value comes from the strength of your counterparty. Because they are the ones who do the investing, not you. Yeah, it's a counterparty who adds the value. Your job is to kind of be smart and opportunistic in terms of identifying the best opportunities. But if you do that, hopefully you're in a position where you have multiple tier one counterparties really adding value to your projects. Look at any of these big mines. Anglo American, they're putting Quellaveco into production, which is a copper project in Peru. And you look at the presentation they put out, and so it shows Quellaveco resource. I think right now it's about 6 million tons of contained copper. And you compare that with some of the other properties they have, and they do that. It's Los Bronces and Kalwasi, and Quellaveco is much smaller resource-wise. But even, Anglo just says, listen, this mine is at the beginning of its resource journey. And so you see the care that this asset is going to receive. So you want to get the assets that will receive that level of care in the future from someone like that. Yeah. And that's really, so for our investors, I feel super comfortable, because I know when we buy West Wall, Vizcachitas, Taca Taca, NOVRF, or something like that, we're not just buying some financial calculation. We're buying a tier one asset that's going to receive the care, that's going to have the best chance of receiving the care and attention that, kind of really you want your investors to get. And then if you can diversify it in the portfolio, which is a unique opportunity, then it gets that much better.
That's a really good point. We've had a lot of conversations on the channel this year because there's been such a surge in royalty companies, a lot of conversations about how to value a royalty company, how to compare, apples to apples, one against the other. And one thing that hasn't been discussed a ton, Alex, is that counterparty risk. At the end of the day, the counterparty is the steward, right, of your investment. And so
it's everything.
It's everything. It's very important, and it's rarely discussed. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, listen, we've taken you from the very beginning. It only makes sense to start doing numbers once you're comfortable with stuff like that.
Yeah.
This isn't the financial business. This is the mining business. It's a technical business. It's a social relations business. So you really, we've struggled, I think, with some sort of these conventional calculations of so-called net asset value. And you're like, what is that? Like, what is net asset value? I mean, do you know who's taking care of this thing? Do you know if they can even make it past their life? There's so many things that go into it, kind of people just come up with these numbers and they're supposed to mean something. I'm quite honestly confused. So I think you have to look at the substance of it and say, okay, what is the asset? What is the quality? Who's going to take care of this thing? Who's going to invest into this thing? Who's going to really send their best people to run this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get that, and that's what we spent pretty much all our time doing, then I think you've got something that you probably can't value very well today. Because if you actually look at the performance of these assets, they far outperform everyone else. And it's not even remotely close. I mean, this is an industry, when you actually look at it, BHP it's unfortunate I lost that presentation, which they put together. And it had a really nice way of explaining how the mining sort of return on capital works. And so we did that top 1%, which outperforms for decades. And then the others' performance is actually not very good. So when we were starting, it's like, listen, let's get the top 1%.
Yeah.
Everything you want is a top 1%. Now we like to add some sort of near term cash flowing ones as well. And they can't always be like that, which is fine. But when you look at the real core value of the company, I mean, it's really these sort of top 1% assets, which are so unique. And so I'm grateful we had a chance to get them while we could. So we'd love to buy more while we go at it.
Well, you hinted at that when you mentioned there's many other things on the horizon. So I was going to bring that up. First, though, something else you mentioned, when we start developing these assets, these key assets in the copper sector, you mentioned you think you're going to see more majors cooperating, multiple majors cooperating to push these things forward. Do you think that's going to be the standard in the future?
Absolutely. The thing is that there's investors right now are very skittish. I think if you look at investor attitudes, they're happy to see commodity prices be high, but they also want the miners to return the money via dividends. I think that's been exactly. So that's been a pretty consistent ask, and that just seems to be where things are. And I think there's definitely some nervousness about capex and overruns and that. And obviously, look, you go to Chile and Peru right now, people are talking about raising taxes and royalties and issues of that nature. I don't think there's any shortage of anxiety in the mining space about what's going to happen. So I do think that, for these big projects, it just makes a lot of sense for the majors to pool resources. And they've done it multiple times already. Look at Escondida, look at Antamina, multiple mines out there where they pool resources. And I think it just makes everyone's life easier. So I do think that's going to be very much a feature of it. I mean, one thing I don't agree with is that people are talking about these modular builds and sort of start small and scale up. Look, maybe once in a while you can do that. But if you're a Rio Tinto, you're a BHP or you're Anglo American, I mean, you're huge companies. You can't go start making a living on the main basis of building small mines. That's just not what you do. That's not why the market buys your stock.
Yeah.
So right. I think that the large deposits are going to have to come into production here. I think both due to electrification, energy transition needs, and just the needs of the miners themselves. They need to replace production. So it's going to be kind of two things driving that. But I do think that the risk mitigation is definitely going to be a big part of things here. And I think pooling resources and just joining forces and really being careful, probably working with the governments and communities that much more closely in a more coordinated way, probably is going to be sort of the way of the future here.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to chase that down. So I appreciate that. Now, just to wrap up, you've probably been on my show more than any company CEO, because when we met, you were very clear. You said, we're going after the top 1%, and you haven't compromised that, right? Every time I've had you back on, that's been the mission, and you guys haven't been distracted by any low-hanging fruit. You've been very disciplined in that approach. So I appreciate that, Alex. I know my audience does, and your shareholders do. You mentioned there's other things on the horizon. I don't know what you can share at this point, because I know you're always in conversation in a multitude of ways, but anything you can hint at for our audience in the future?
I mean, what I can comfortably say is just where we are, so with the overall company's perspective and life cycle. We went public. We were a small company. We were 20 cap when we did the direct listing, and I think we had a full pipeline of things ready to go, and we executed on that. And I think people really liked what we were doing, and we were fortunate to get a lot of investor support and the like. And that really, I think, allowed us to build a foundation, so that you have a company rather than just a couple deals or a couple assets. Now, I think, given the sector we are in, what we always had the view on is you need to be able to consolidate the available pool of royalties and really diversify, which to really give any investor a way of investing in the energy transition or copper, nickel, or anything that you may choose through Nova. I mean, that's really how we see the company. So now with the foundation in place, I know this deal was for cash. There's definitely a bunch of deals we're looking at which are more equity oriented. I think now people can vend into the company as a consolidation vehicle in a legitimate way, in a way that maybe wasn't quite possible in the beginning of our going public. So I think it's a really exciting time. We're not losing focus. We like what we're doing, and just these sectors are what we want to do. There's definitely some more tier 1 assets on the horizon we're pursuing. There's some tier 2s that are closer to cash flow, which would be nice to balance out the portfolio. As much as we love the tier 1s, they can't all be tier 1s, and that's okay as long as they're solid assets. I think it provides some balance. So I'd love to see some more near-term cash flow in the portfolio just to balance things out. But yeah, look, overall, I think it's super exciting because I think it's rounding at the form, I think, as a really strong, diversified company that hopefully for years to come can give investors that exposure, and both to existing portfolio, organic growth, because the assets keep growing, and obviously more acquisitions at the right time. So it's really exciting right now.
I love it. And I love the journey. Yeah. When we first had you on, you were a small company. And now, when you talk about Nova, you're talking about Anglo, you're talking about Glencore, you're talking about First Quantum, the biggest players in the business and more. So thank you for coming back on, getting back in front of the audience, Alex. Always.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. We're alive. Absolutely nothing to worry about. So we've been very busy. We're super happy with this deal. It's really a pleasure to do something that's so targeted on a strategy. Just as an entrepreneur, you feel good when you do things of that nature. It's really fun, and we look forward to more for sure. Okay.
Now I know with this news this morning, you didn't get any sleep last night. You told me so. Go take a nap.
We're still figuring out how to get a deal done, put out a press release, and actually sleep properly the night before. We're still behind in that department for sure.
You may never figure that out. Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Alex.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Much appreciated.
As always, if you enjoy this content, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on the team. And if you want to take the next step and go a bit deeper with my content, I publish a free weekly newsletter every Friday where I debrief my portfolio. I distill the top lessons I've uncovered from the guests I've had on this show every week. And I talk about sectors and industries that I think are poised to move, areas I'm looking for opportunity, and places that I'm allocating capital. I love writing it. We publish every Friday. The link is right beneath this video. Love to have you join the tribe.